Excellency, esteemed guests present here physically as well as virtually. I understand that this event is being live streamed. Good noon, and rather good afternoon when I look at the clock. So it's already, we're three minutes or so late. A very warm welcome to Chatham House. When I think of Kenya, there are three things which come to my mind. The very first thing is Kenyan tea. The second thing is technology. And the third T is T of transformation. And when I think of transformation, a pop-up window in my head opens with a picture of a person sitting on my left right now. We are very privileged to have him here with us today. He has been His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, the Deputy President of Kenya since 2013. His magic touch of transformation of the agriculture and educational sectors when he was the minister worked very well. Then he took up another very easy job, which was the constitutional reform, easier than the first two. So this is the second time I hear you're engaged in that one. We are going to hear a story of that transformation today from him, with a touch of inclusion, growth, and change. Before I invite His Excellency to go to lectern and speak with us, I have been advised to make two statements. One, although we are at Chatham House, but we are not going by Chatham House rules. So don't do at Rome what Romans do. The meeting is on the record, and you can actually refer to it, and if speakers say something, you can take their names. Second, filming and recording without permission is not allowed. You are, however, welcome to tweet using the hashtag CHAfrica. I've been told to say this, so I'm saying it. Over to you, Excellency. We're all ears. I understand you'll speak for 20 minutes or so, and after that, we have a question and answer session. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nabil Goher, for welcoming me. I am delighted. I would have wanted to speak for an hour, but I was told I have only 20 minutes. I'm delighted to be in this space, ladies and gentlemen, today. And I want to say good morning. Good afternoon, actually. Good afternoon. Let me say I'm happy to be here, and thank you for welcoming me. Your thoughtful invitation reflects a deep interest in forming a genuine understanding of the most important current issues in Kenya, which helps in formulating the best way of engaging with and around them. The reception accorded to my delegation and I has been nothing short of commendable, and has got me thinking that maybe I should have been here earlier. I also appreciate the warm introduction and kind words of my friend and brother Nabil. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you very warm greetings from the President and the people of Kenya. And as Kenyans say, hamjambo. The matter of where we are today cannot be properly understood independently of the long journey that brought us here, the things we take for granted in Kenya, the aspirations which form our conscious and unconscious expectations, should not be divorced from where and who we are a decade ago. On 4th August 2010, Kenya took decisions whose momentous ramifications continue to unravel even now. The product of that day's referendum was promulgated on 27th August, inaugurating a new governance paradigm. Yet, we did not get to 2010 in a flash. The fundamental issues that animated the desire for constitutional reform revolved around marginalization, an opaque and repressive and unaccountable executive, captive parliament, and a subservient judiciary. Under this undesirable system, citizens served the government instead of the other way around. It was felt that there was neither recourse nor escape except physical flight and exile. Indeed, a large component of our diaspora those days were political exiles. Further, we must never underestimate the social, economic, and political gravitational force exerted by an imperial presidency, which recruited members of parliament to the cabinet and controlled the parliamentary program, appointed judges, and controlled the judiciary, had absolute and unilateral discretionary power over public land, and was effectively in control of every sector. How did the 2010 Constitution change Kenya? First of all, it recreated the executive, delinked it from parliament, and thus ensuring that neither institution was functionally adulterated. A leaner executive of 24 replaced its customarily bloated predecessor, whose size normally ranged around 70. The new executive focused on delivery, with a cabinet dedicated to implementation. Today, appointees of the executive must be vetted by parliament, and an array of constitutional commissions, including the National Land Commission, independent offices now exist to accountably and transparently exercise what in the past were prerogative powers of the executive. The executive has no say in the calendar and operations of parliament or the judiciary. Its size is restricted and role no longer commingled and conflicted. The single most important instrument of policy making, the budget, has been demystified. There are no more secrets around the Treasury's ministerial briefcase, which in days past was the focal point of public obsession and mystery. There are no more gray areas. The people must participate, and Parliament must decide. Under the current Constitution, legislative efficiency of Parliament has been enhanced. As a result, Parliament runs an independent program and calendar. Days when the President decided when to dissolve or open Parliament are behind us. In turn, legislative output has improved with 294 bills passed in the last 7 years compared to 83 in a similar period in the past. This efficiency helped us in the constitutional implementation process. Along with the individual focused Bill of Rights, public participation, which did not exist at all in the previous constitutional regime, has been propelled into the center of public policy making and implementation at all levels, further elevating the office of the citizen in governance. The tone and often enough fundamental character of public discourse in Kenya has therefore changed irreversibly. This recalibration of government arms and institutions has produced efficiency, which has been manifested throughout all levels of governance. The Constitution therefore has dispersed power horizontally between arms of government and independent institutions and devolved it to 47 county governments. At the county level, resources are targeted at locally developed priorities. The best manifestation of devolution in practice lies in the domain of health services. The achievements made by devolved health services traverse many fasts, as well as expansion that go far beyond what was imaginable before the new constitution. County governments inherited a total, for example, of 874 doctors. To date, 4,637 new doctors have been hired, while from 6,620 nurses inherited before devolution, new recruitment has increased the number to 25,595 in the first 5 years of devolution. Additionally, 52,969 community health workers have also been recruited. For the very first time since independence, a cesarean section birth was performed in Mandera in 2014, open heart surgery in Mombasa County in 2015, and a brain surgery in Embu last year. Before devolution, these services were only possible in Nairobi and at a great expense. The Judicial Service Commission has an independent budget and manages the appointment, promotion, and discipline of judges. As we worked on the implementation of the 2010 Constitution, President Kenyatta and I realized the political culture that revolved around personality cults, tribal parties, and ethnic contests needed to be done away with. In essence, the political software and architecture needed to be changed. Everyone agrees that 2007-2008 period brought Kenya to the precipice of an abyss. We resolved to apply lessons learned from that dark and tragic passage to shift the country's political trajectory and change the political culture. For many reasons, it was widely accepted that the communities popularly seen as protagonists could never be reconciled sufficiently to cooperate in any respect or at all. A family maintained faulty strategic assumption in Kenya's political practice was that the enmity between communities in the Rift Valley, for example, and central Kenya was eternal, and that productive engagement between their leaders was utterly impossible. Under these conditions, Kenyan politics was organized around negative ethnicity, or what Professor John London has termed political tribalism. While cognizant of this lazy dogma, we decided to change this assumption and forge a new political paradigm that brought communities and leaders expected to be perpetually hostile and antagonistic to the sphere of conciliation, collaboration, and cohesion. The principal objective of this difficult and politically unpopular resolve was to change Kenya's politics with our eyes not so much on winning seats or gaining power, but on uniting people. Although it was not initially possible to have one political party for the purpose, we forged a coalition that from day one was managed as a single political party for all intents and purposes. Subsequently, we took the next politically difficult decision of formally merging 12 political parties into one party. What did I do? These changed the political landscape in the most fundamental way since our independence. For example, the debate in the last election, because of what we had done, became about the best policy courses to deliver free compulsory primary education and free secondary education, while we took credit for the rollout. Our competitors said they had thought about it. Countrywide transport infrastructure, including the standard gauge railway. While we built the first 600 kilometers in a record 3 years, our competitors said they had planned about it. And resolving the security situation in Somalia was a major campaign contest, while we insisted that it was necessary to keep our troops in Somalia until we eliminate all threats of terrorism. Our competitors canvassed that our troops in Somalia should be brought back home at the earliest opportunity possible. Another fundamental consequence arises from the persistent claim that no party or government had ever won elections on the basis of its development agenda or achievements. In turn, this claim gave birth to the advice that it was necessary to engage in spectacle, drama, sideshows, and emotional appeals, including personal and tribal appeals, to achieve political traction. President Kenyatta and I prosecuted our last election campaign in terms of what our government had achieved and on the basis of solid evidence that was to be done on what was to be done in the next 5 years. The outcome of that election affirmed our thesis and debunked long-held but spurious suppositions. Our party won more seats at every tier than all the other parties combined, and of course, we won the presidency fair and square. In pursuing a systematic program of de-ethnicizing politics and running a competent administration, we have managed to achieve huge transformation for Kenya. Even as we acknowledge the self-evident and direct as well as more nuanced and indirect positive returns of our new constitution, we must also admit that many Kenyans have professed reason to be dissatisfied with certain aspects of the fundamental normative architecture. The reasons given or particulars set out include the much contested winner-take-all character of our electoral contest, as well as perceived functional paralysis occasioned by the disjuncture of the executive and parliament. We know that there is persistent friction and perceived overlap between the levels of governance of our allocation of functions and resources between the two levels of government. There has also been a feeling that the counties do not possess sufficient capacity yet to perform certain functions. Although described in the Constitution in apparent clear terms, debate persists about overlaps, duplication, the shareable revenue vis-a-vis respective functions, the borrowing powers of counties, as well as counties being able to raise own revenues to outgrow current over-reliance on the national government. The question that we need to ask ourselves, are these misgivings well-founded and deserving of a remedial constitutional amendment? The fact that we have registered tremendous success under the current constitution does not mean that any misgivings around some aspects of its architecture are unjustified. In fact, some challenges currently being encountered are not wholly unexpected. Nearly 30% of Kenyans did in 2010 express these concerns in one way or another. At a personal level, I prosecuted a number of them with the expectation that the committee of experts would apply itself adequately. I bear witness to the fact that the issues with the Constitution do actually predate its promulgation. I and others strongly took issue with the way the structure of the executive vis-a-vis the opposition had been formulated. The current formulation undermines executive accountability and saddled our democracy with a headless, incoherent, and dysfunctional opposition. The Constitution neither recognizes nor creates the functions of the official opposition. it is not proper that the leader of a party garnering the second highest votes has no formal constitutional role. Elections in Kenya are close-run contests. Often enough, the winner and the runner-up achieve more than 5 million votes. The winner ascends to a formally constituted constitutional leadership role, while the runner-up becomes a virtual stranger in leadership. I have heard some suggestions, even by opposition leaders, that the national executive should be expanded to include a prime minister as well as 2 deputies as a means of addressing the winner-take-all challenge. I don't know how that is supposed to be achieved, because this suggestion has 2 problems. It does not resolve the problem, which is that we need a functional, constitutional, official opposition. And secondly, even if the positions were created, it would still be taken by the winning party. So you're not solving the problem. My suggestions are as follows. First, the national government should be reconfigured to comprise the national executive headed by the president and the official opposition headed by the leader of the party or coalition of parties whose presidential candidate wins the second highest votes. That is good for accountability. And secondly, it removes or mitigates the winner-take-all perception. The leader of the party which becomes second becomes the leader of the opposition, and with his or her running mate automatically becomes members of parliament and assume the leadership of official opposition. This formula should apply at the county level as well. I further propose that with the leader of opposition taking leadership of the opposition in parliament, the deputy president should then take over the leadership of government business in parliament. This should be replicated at the county level by deputy governors. The Senate, we must make a decision to make the Senate the upper house, because as currently formulated, the Senate is something in between many things. Thirdly, cabinet secretaries should be ex officio members of parliament and must attend sittings of parliament at least once a week, and whenever required to answer questions on the floor of the House. This will remove the perception that there is a disconnect between the executive and the legislature. I, however, maintain that members of cabinet should not be elected members of parliament. Fourthly, we must resolve once and for all the mechanism for the attainment of the 2/3 gender rule. We must apply ourselves to it, we must deal with it, and we must overcome it. Having said this, I know I'm pressed for time. Having said this, the next question is, do we have the constitutional moment to prosecute these reforms? Let me put this question in context. Constitutional implementation is still underway, and gradually we see gains building up. For example, in the first election in 2013, no woman was elected governor. Yet in 2017, 3 women, in Kitui, Bomet, and Kirinyaga, were elected as governors. In 2013, we had no female elected senator. This changed in 2017 when Uasin Gishu, Isiolo, and Nakuru County elected female senators. Moreover, no educational requirements being mandatory, the majority of members of county assemblies were persons with limited education in 2013. In 2017, engineers, doctors, teachers, and other highly educated professionals contested and are now serving as members of county assemblies. So progressively, capacity is being built around those institutions. The trend supports the expectation of progressive entrenchment of constitutional standards, values, and principles in every implementation cycle. Thus, have we reached the moment when we may say that we have sufficiently tested the full scope of the dispensation, or do we still need time? That is a decision that Kenyans will have to make. And let me conclude, Mr. Chairman, by saying that even as we worked on consolidating and implementing our new constitution, equally, we focused on regional integration. The same 5 years, we have made tremendous progress in consolidating the East African community. We now have a single tourist visa covering 3 countries. We can travel around East Africa with limited paperwork. Citizens in the East Africa can now travel using their identity cards. And in fact, the East African community is the most progressive trading bloc, with our inter-trade at around 20%. That is the highest, not in Africa, but in the global south. And as we consolidate the EAC, Kenya in 2015 signed into the tripartite agreement that brings together EAC, SADC, and COMESA, and brings together 26 countries, a population of about 625 million, and a GDP of about 1.3 trillion US dollars. Last year, again, His Excellency the President signed Kenya into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is moving at a very high record. We got 44 countries that signed in 1 year. We have already 18 countries that have ratified, including Kenya. In fact, we were the second country after Ethiopia. And within months, we expect another 4 countries to sign, or to ratify, sorry, which means that when we reach 22 countries, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will come into force. That is in a couple of months. Meaning that as we implemented our devolution program, we didn't lose focus of the need to build a strong regional partnership. It is our contestation that, or our position, that devolution consolidates a nation, harmonizes a nation, and creates a strong nation. And it's strong nations that will have the capacity to forge strong trading blocs regionally. And therefore, it is not a contradiction. It is not a paradox. It is a continuum from devolution to integration. Let me conclude by saying that in one community in the Rift Valley, there is a saying that says, Karigay kipset aguptep. Do you understand, Mr. Chairman? In essence, it says something like this, that the person who works very hard, or the bold guy, or the courageous person, sometimes achieves as much as the coward or the lazy guy. How so? It was said in this community that when there used to be, in the old context, communities used to go to raid cows from other communities. So it was said that the brave guys would go to bring the cows from the next community. The coward and the lazy guy would remain at home because he's scared to go, because it was a dangerous adventure. But in the process, he would give birth to girls while he was hanging around. So when the others came back, they had to pay bride price. And this character who was at home would give out his girls, and he would end up with some cows. So the brave guys who went to bring cows will have some cows. The coward at home will also have some cows. That's how they... Why am I saying that? I'm saying that just to emphasize the point that there is no contradiction between devolution and regional integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, for your very concise and convincing expose. I am enthused. You have covered a lot in a short period of time, starting from the regional issues. You have touched upon the national issues, devolution, as well as a lot of innovative work which is being done in terms of the constitutional reform, which is still ongoing. Now, if I may, for 30 seconds, have my Commonwealth hat and appreciate that Kenya is a valued member of the Commonwealth, currently the chair of the CMAG, which is Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group, which is the custodian of Commonwealth values and principles. We're going to have our Women's Affairs Ministers meeting in Kenya in this year, and also a lot of work which we are doing in the area of trade and debt management with Kenya. We move on to question and answer session. We have good 25 minutes. So you will give me 2 minutes to set the rules, right? Okay. I see many hands. So of course, this was wonderful, I can tell. To start with, when you raise your hand, I will identify you. Please identify yourself when you are identified by me. I hope you understand it. I understood at the end, what you said, Excellency. And when colleagues are here with the roving mics, once you are identified, the roving mic will be with you. And I will request you to be clear and concise in your questions so that you allow others also to ask questions. So the time starts now, right? Okay. First one here, and I'll take one on the left. And the second one was this gentleman, because you raised your hand first, right? So the first question from the lady with glasses.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My name is Councillor Elizabeth Kang'ethe. I'm an elected councillor here in London, and I'm originally from Kenya. Your Excellency, karibu sana. We appreciate your presence. My question really, or my concern is, first of all, thank you so much. That is too much to cover within the short time that you had. I'm concerned with the diaspora inclusion. I've gone through a document which was through the Commonwealth Secretariat, which is about a survey about understanding the investment potential of the Kenya diaspora. And one of the challenges that we find, or you found as the Commonwealth, is governance issues are perceived to be the greatest barriers to investment, followed by financial system issues and other obstacles. Now we find that I think even the policies have taken so long, and we in the diaspora, every time we talk about inclusion, we find that it's taken so long. So looking at especially that particular survey, there's nothing much that has happened, and we really feel concerned. And it's a shame that you didn't even have time to talk to the diaspora, having visited us for the first time. We were looking forward to have a meeting with you so that we can really discuss some of these issues that we really feel that they are pressing us in the diaspora who feel that we have got a lot to offer. There's a lot that we can do to support our country as much as we are working or living here. So I don't know about that.
I think you have made your point. Please be respectful to others' time. Yes, this gentleman in the middle. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is it over there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Deputy President, thanks very much. I'm Tom Wilson from the Financial Times. David Murathi, the former vice chairman of the Jubilee Coalition, has been quite publicly critical of you in recent weeks. He resigned from his position and he's criticised some of your track record and he's made allegations of corruption. I haven't heard you respond to those allegations, so I wondered if you could respond today and potentially comment on your ambitions personally for 2022. Thank you.
All right. I'll take one more question from this gentleman and then we'll go back to His Excellency. Yes, this gentleman. Yes.
I'm Reverend Kamau Anyota, and I work here. I'm an entrepreneur here in London, but I go back to Kenya a lot. Deputy President, Your Excellency, thank you for coming to visit us here in London. We are very delighted that you made the journey. I wish you were able to go tomorrow to where you are going, but I hear you are not. Now, my question is, it seems like in Kenya, during when Kibaki came to power, there was a coming together of the reformists and the conservatives, and the reformists had a very good place in the governance of the country. Then obviously something went wrong, and the reformists just found themselves out of power at some point. And I think your coming together with Uhuru was almost conservatives again regrouping and coming together and gaining power again. People who had benefited from a very conservative regime in terms of their wealth and in terms of their political patronage and the tutorage that they had gotten from the former president, Moi. And then it seems like, in the West, you find that conservatives come and then the liberals come. And don't you think that 2022 is time for the reformists now to come in a very pure way rather than in a coalition so that they can be able to rule the country? Because it's always
right.
good.
Thank you very much. We got the question. I think, please be respectful. Would you like these three questions? Yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me stand. I understand, Elizabeth, your frustration on both aspects of the inclusion of the diaspora. We have tried as much as possible working through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to find the mechanism for us to tap into the resource that is our diaspora. We do not take for granted at all that the diaspora is an important component of our development architecture. In fact, the diaspora is the largest contributor of our foreign exchange. I think upwards of maybe 290 billion last year, which is a huge contribution by a community out there that we haven't reached out sufficiently, I must admit. We have now a diaspora directorate at our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think our ambassador is here to try and, as much as possible, reach out to our diaspora and find how they can contribute to their expertise, their talent, in developing our country. We have been trying to find out how, whether we can work on a diaspora bond where they can earn more money from the remittances that we are getting from our diaspora. There are many initiatives. I must say that we haven't found sufficient traction for it, and therefore that explains your frustration. But I want to give you our commitment that we're not giving up at all. It's not in our radar. We will continue to pursue until we make meaning of that huge section of Kenyans that are working hard elsewhere for our country. It is unfortunate also that I was not able to meet the diaspora in London. It is not my making. It is an operation of the Constitution. The President is scheduled to go for a meeting in Addis, where he is chairing the section of APRM. It is a constitutional requirement which you passed, that when the President is away, the Deputy President must be in country. So I would have loved. In fact, it is not you who is frustrated. I am more frustrated that I was not able to meet the diaspora. But I want to give you my commitment that the next time I am in this part of the world, I will purpose to make sure that we have that engagement, because you deserve it. Yeah? My good brother from the Financial Times, I haven't responded to David Murathe in Kenya. I am not about to respond to him in Europe because he doesn't merit my response. However, whatever things that he is raising, he is at liberty to prosecute those issues in the best way he deems best. I can tell you that I am ready to respond to any allegation that will be made, either against my character or against any other adventure that I will engage in. And for the record, the decision as to who becomes the candidate of Jubilee in 2022 is not a personal decision. It is not going to be a decision of a few people. It's going to be the decision of a political party called Jubilee under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta as party leader. And the membership of the party will decide who becomes that candidate. For the moment, we are not focused on who becomes candidate in 2022. For the moment, we are focused on how to deliver on the commitments that we made to the people of Kenya under the Big Four and Jubilee Manifesto, and that is my focus. Reverend Kamau, you seem to have some science around who is a reformer and who is not. I want to tell you, my brother, that if you, for 1 minute, imagine that the people who came together in 2003 were any different from us, I want to tell you, you're dead wrong. The people in that group is President Kibaki himself was KANU party, vice chairman forever. Kalonzo was there forever. Musalia was there forever. In fact, if you put together how many years those people were in KANU, I think we calculated the other day, between me and Uhuru Kenyatta, we were in KANU for about, I think, under 20 years. Our colleagues were in KANU for over 100 years. So I don't know how you will classify anybody as this or the other. But I think to respond to the real issue is going forward, how leaders are judged in Kenya, in the best of my thinking, is the contest for the leadership of Kenya should be about track record, ideas, a program that works, because that is what will make the difference in Kenya. It is not about the things that will not matter to the people of Kenya. You know? Let me give you an example. We have built a standard gauge railway, 600 kilometers, another 200 kilometers is underway. In the last 5 years, it has been in the books of our government for 30 years. It was not built. We have connected 6.9 million people to electricity in the last 5 years. For 50 years, only 2.3 million Kenyans were connected to electricity. We have tripled the number of households connected to electricity in a record 5 years. We have constructed 7,000 kilometers of tarmac in the last 5 years. 12,000 kilometers were constructed in 50 years. The question you ask yourself is, how possible is it to build a standard gauge railway, to do 7,000 kilometers of tarmac, to connect an additional almost 5 million people to electricity, to increase the number of people on health insurance from 3 million to 7 million in a record 5 years? What was going on before 2013? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And I'm not talking about programs that you cannot go and see for yourself on the ground. And that is why I was saying in my statement that we were told in 2017 that you cannot win an election on the basis of a development track record as a government. You need some emotional things. You need to appeal to emotion. You need to appeal to your community. You need to appeal to... But we said, no, Kenyans can see for themselves what we have managed to achieve. So that should be the contest. That is how Kenya is going to be transformed. It is not going to be what ethnicity you come from. It is not going to be whether you look like a reformer or a conservative. It is going to be, what is your track record? What can you do to change the lives of people? That's the contest.
Second round, lady on this side in red and blue.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Dorcas Guata. I'm from Zimbabwe, working in East Africa and Southern Africa.
I didn't get your name, sorry.
Dorcas Guata, G-W-A-T-A.
Okay.
May I start commending by, may I commend you on Kenya's progress in the last couple of years in the face of challenges. Your model of development will be relevant to many of us in the continent. You'll be aware of Zimbabwe's history, current situation and historic situation. I wonder if you could speak to lessons that Zimbabwe can take from Kenya, if any, particularly in terms of regional engagement and international engagement. And considering the southern belt of Africa is much more fragmented than the eastern belt, is there a scope there for eastern region of Africa to support the southern region of Africa?
Thank you. There's a young perspective. We didn't have it, so you have it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Your Excellency, welcome to London, and thank you for a lovely speech. Now, you mentioned accountability and security issues, and you mentioned constitutional reform. Many issues which basically, when you're talking about investments in Kenya in the next 20 years to 25 years, will impact how we progress forward. Now, my name is Fataya Gela, I forgot to say that. I do write on international conflict regulation for Somaliland Sun, and I'm involved as well with youth work and Somali women in London. My question to you is, you mentioned, given that Kenya has experienced recently the terror attack by Al-Shabaab, given the fact that Kenya and Somalia are neighbors, and that the troops who are on a peacekeeping mission are much needed in Kenya, as you have mentioned in your speech. Is there a future where Kenya will withdraw from Somalia? And is there also a decision by the Kenyan government to close the refugee camps in Dadaab and for the refugee, the Somali refugee and the South Sudan refugee, to deal with the security issues?
Thank you. That gentleman at that corner.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. That was an amazing presentation. And my name is David Mutai. I'm the Director for Intergovernmental Relations, Bomet County. And I just want to say that you're coming together with the who brought peace in the country, which we really appreciate as the global community, as Kenyans. And also staying together, we've seen amazing development. From the presentation, two questions. The first one is addressing the wage bill in the country. I think there've been talk about the wage bill can be addressed through reduction of overrepresentation. So what is your opinion on that? Too many MPs, MCAs, and all that. The second is on the referendum. You've given very good suggestions, which I really agree with, giving the leader of opposition a substantive position. That really makes sense. The winner takes all is what has caused problems in Kenya ever since. So my question is, would that be addressed through a referendum or through other administrative mechanisms? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a very quick one from, if you don't, Excellency, I thought,
My name is Wekesa, PhD student at King's College London. And my question is still on the management of elections, which over time they've become a powder keg for violence in Kenya. In your personal opinion, and Isaac Hassan, the former IEBC chair, had alluded to it, do you think IEBC has the logistical capacity to manage 6 elections in one day? And are you of the opinion that perhaps we need to stagger our elections into different aspects to manage them?
Excellency.
Dorcas, I think the whole development space is replete with lessons, failures, in one measure or another. I strongly believe that we are consolidating the continent, and we are learning things from SADC, where Zimbabwe is a member. They are learning things from EAC. We believe that the fragmented nature of the market in our continent is what has limited our capability to engage with other trading blocs across the globe. The coming together of SADC, EAC, and COMESA. And I believe Zimbabwe is both a member of COMESA and SADC. We will give us the necessary impetus for us to consolidate our markets and for us to share experiences. What we have gotten right in EAC, and that is why we've pushed the intra-trade to 20%, when it is still 12% in SADC and COMESA, are lessons that we can bring on board. The fact that, and this is very exciting for me, the fact that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area has been signed by 44 countries in a record 1 year and ratified by 18 countries so far. And the horizon looks really promising that we should be able to have that Continental Free Trade Area come into force, at least this year. That gives me optimism that the continent, countries in the continent, including Zimbabwe, learning from Kenya, working with all our neighbors, we should be able to get our act together, be able to negotiate much more effectively, be able to project ourselves in a manner that we can take our rightful place in the trade that goes on around this globe. Speaking to it, of all the international trade that goes on, Africa accounts for only 3% of it. So we have potential, but we need to get organized. And that is what I would say, that countries like Kenya, like Zimbabwe, must be at the forefront in ensuring that we all benefit from this coming together. Fata? Yeah? About our experience in Somalia and the Horn of Africa in general, to do with refugees and terrorism, I have the following to say. We did sign between Kenya, the UNHCR, and Somalia an agreement on the safe voluntary return of refugees from Kenya to Somalia. and a lot of progress. I was in Dadaab, I think 4 months ago. A lot of progress has been achieved. Close to 100,000 refugees have gone under that voluntary agreement on their own. They've gone back home because of the stabilization that has gone on by AMISOM in Somalia. It's not all bad news. It is only the bad news. It's only that bad news get to the media more than the good news. There is a lot of good news going on around the whole of that refugee challenge that we have as a country and as a region. On the aspect of terrorism, terrorism is not primarily or centrally around Somalia only. Terrorism, as we all know, is an international problem, transboundary, regional, international challenge that we have, and we have to deal with it as such. We have taken the posture as Kenya, and we have taken the position as Kenya, that we will play our role as a country in every space that is available to work with others to deal with the challenge of terrorism. And until we are satisfied as a country that we have minimized the threat of terrorism sufficiently, we will not walk away from any situation on account of difficulty or anything. So our presence in Somalia is guaranteed under AMISOM because as a country we believe that fighting terrorism in Somalia is as good as fighting terrorism in Kenya. If we do not fight terrorism in Somalia, we must be ready to fight it in Kenya. So we are better off fighting it in every space so that we stand the best possible chance of eliminating that challenge. Mr. Mutai, on the wage bill and the referendum, I posed the question. We have all manner of suggestions, and I did say that yes, we have issues with the Constitution. The question we need to ask ourselves is, have we reached the threshold where we say we need to take these issues to a referendum? That is a decision that will have to be made by Kenyans in some way. Do we carry out a referendum alongside the next general election? That's an option. Do we have the resources to do the census this year, boundary review next year, an election in 2022, and a referendum somewhere in between? Is that reasonable? Is that possible? That's another discussion that needs to be gone into. So I do not have a straight answer as to whether this should be addressed in the referendum or so. On matters to do with wage bill, yes, we have a challenge on the wage bill, and the challenge on wage bill goes beyond what you have said. I do not subscribe to the people who say we are overrepresented. I think we need to interrogate the wage bill, in the way we should. What percentage of the wage bill comes from representation? What do we need to do? And I think that's a discussion that we do not want to superficially address ourselves to. Mr. Wekesa, about the capacity of the IEBC and the problem we have with elections. I believe very strongly that in our politics, IEBC is the least of our problems, in my very honest opinion. It is only that it is a convenient excuse for people who don't win the elections. The real problem in our country is not the management of the election. Because to the best of my knowledge, and I have been in many of these elections, the real problem is that we have people who participate in elections and they have only one outcome in their mind. And that is not how Democrats operate. You know, if you go to an election and you are only expecting to win, then you have a problem. Because when you go to an election, the options are you win or you don't win. You know? So the real problem, according to me, and I'm not saying I'm right, from where I sit, the real challenge is that we have people who do not believe in democracy participating in democratic elections. So that's where you have a problem. Because if you participate in a democratic election, you must expect an outcome this way or the other way. And for example, in 2017, the year before last, the presidential elections were nullified in Kenya, where I was running mate of Uhuru Kenyatta. So our election was nullified by the Supreme Court. We had serious misgivings about what the Supreme Court did. But we said, fine, we are Democrats. We said we are going to participate in an election. The Constitution provides that if the Supreme Court have power to nullify the election, if they so deem, and they've ordered us to go back to an election, we went back to an election where we were persuaded beyond reasonable doubt that we had won the election. How do I say we had won the election? We had won more seats in every category. We won 800 MCAs out of 1,400. We won 216 members of parliament out of a possible 350. We won more women reps than our competitors combined. We won more governors than our competitors combined. We won more senators than our competitors combined. How possible was it that we lost the presidential election? Doesn't make sense. So, but as Democrats, we went back to the election. So the problem in Kenya are the people who refuse the outcome of an election. That is when things run amok. I think the remedy is that going forward, we should only allow Democrats to participate in elections. Okay. All right.
Well, all good things come to an end. I'm sorry, I see many. On this high note, I'm sorry, we are running out of time, and we have to close this meeting. I wanted to thank everybody for your valuable time, for being here. We had a very, very free and frank exchange of views. And thanks to Chatham House for arranging this event. And my last request will be that you please keep seated for just 10 seconds for me before His Excellency Dr. William Ruto leaves this room. And perhaps we would like to finish this with a big round of applause for him for making it today despite his visit.